Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to this Sunday Dharma talk. The title of this talk is the obvious. You hear the name of the talk. Talk about tigers and streams. Makes sense? Nah, it doesn't make any sense. Excuse me, but I wanted to bring up something. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on it, but tigers is a story of the memoirist Alexander King, I think his name was, whom I read many years ago. Used to, when he would leave someone's house, he would say, "May this house be safe from tigers." And he would always say that when he left, for every place that he visited. He was a humorist. He was quite a entertaining fellow. I really enjoyed that book. I think that was the title of the book, but it could have been something else. He wrote a lot of books. So, may this house be safe from tigers. And when he was asked, well, why do you say that every time you leave our house? You say that. He says, "Well, been bothered by any tigers yet?" Of course, would say no, and he said, "That's my case." I don't remember the exact quote of that, but the idea there that I'm endeavoring to say is it's about working with things as they show up, not particularly fighting with things. So we can ask questions about that. But next I want to go to the rivers, which is also a little bit of a story. The woman who was a meditation teacher, I'm not sure what happened to her or anything more about her other than her name was Barry Stevens. And she says, she would say, can't remember the title of her meditation book, but something about the river flowing. She would say, "See which way the river is flowing," and then say, "Go that way." So it's the idea there is that I'm endeavoring to help you with your permission, of course, is to whatever is happening, that's it. Whatever's happening, that is it. If you add anything to it, any commentary, albeit accurate, well, that feels terrible. That's accurate. Something occurred, someone said something, someone insulted you, excuse me, and you have a reaction. You go away from what you just received into what you think about it, or what the world thinks about it. Or you might have some kind of a social or cultural schematic or diagram, so you don't even have to think about it. It just immediately, that's offensive because you're buying into cultural mores. I'm not saying you shouldn't, maybe you shouldn't, but what I'm saying is you need to be aware of what you're doing. It's not about doing this, which is right, as opposed to not doing that, which is wrong. It's about awareness. It's awareness of what, this is when the consciousness, that part of the mind that is receiving, when it leaves the receiving part of consciousness and goes into the producing part of consciousness, it's the very nature of confusion. It's the nature of the war in the Ukraine. It's the nature of all the chaos that's going on in our government and in any government. Cause and effect, right and wrong, should be constantly someone trying to manipulate something else. Pardon the short. Hopefully that'll come to an end with more coffee. I think that's gonna do it. So, kind of a silly title, but allow me to tell you those two stories about Barry Stevens and Alexander King. So the idea here that I'm endeavoring to encourage you to do is be genuine. Be genuine. Whatever arises, I don't care what it is. We think we're solid, separate beings. We think we're human. We are not. We are consciousness arising as a particular human being on June the 14th, 1983, or whatever it may be. So sure, we have all that relative construct that we believe in that gives us an identity, and that depending on the causes and conditions that occurred in this particular consciousness that you call me, that you call me and my stuff, my ideas, my judgments, my feelings, my evaluations, my hopes and my fears, and on and on and on, and my talents and my handicaps. We just have an incredible elaboration of our identity and who we are. And if something comes along and threatens it, then we create more things around that. Well, they shouldn't have said that. Well, they shouldn't treat me that way. very, very difficult area just to be a human being. Along comes the Buddha 2,500 years ago and began to point this out after he discovered what this was himself. Long time ago. Down through the centuries, people have heard quite a few words that he said, especially considering that he was once called the silent sage of the Sakyas, which talked an awful lot for being a silent sage. You know why he's called that? Probably because he didn't say much. So again, it's about be genuine, be whatever shows up. Don't fight with that. Don't agree with that. Don't ignore that. Don't fight with it. Aggression. Don't agree with it. Passion. And don't ignore it. Ignorance. Just whatever shows up, the very chemistry that shows up in front of you, as far as the texture, the fragrance, or the smell, or the seductiveness of that, or the repulsiveness of that. Please don't miss your life by buying into some crazy idea based on some cultural artifact that somebody somewhere 1,500 years ago, or maybe 1,000 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, decided that this is how you should feel and how you should react, and this is what's right and this is what's wrong. You don't have to do that. Liberate yourself from that. That doesn't mean you'll break laws. You might be even more law-abiding because you're really clear about what this is about. You're no longer operating out of hope for this and fear of that. Most of the world is doing that. Most of the world is fighting with their world, fighting with everything rather than operating out of some clarity about it. And of course, as you know, the way we train ourselves to do this is spend a lot of time seeing the way we can't do it. We see the weakness of the muscle that actually receives in the mind, to use that image, and we train our mind to just receive the thoughts. Negative thoughts come up triggered by what happened at a job yesterday. You see, even though if you go into that and think about it, well, of course, it was my turn to do this, and I was supposed to get this job, and somebody else got it, and someone else got a raise, and they got a raise. Why would they get a raise? All they do is they're lazy. You know what I'm talking about, these kind of stories. It's not that they're not true. Of course they're true. But it's the mundane path of do it right, don't do it wrong, do the right thing, fix it. I'm not against it. Go do that. Why would you even listen to me for another 10 minutes? If you think you can fix this, if you think this world is a whole series of things that are right and wrong, some kind of believable structure, perhaps you should be doing this. But if you're listening to what I'm saying, you could give this the benefit of the doubt and see that you cannot fix this. You cannot, it's an illusion. You can't go in and operate on an illusion and make it change. And if you do have some success or luck getting this to change into that, it won't last. It's, as is been said way before we got here, it's dependently risen. Nothing comes up as an individual, separate situation. It is dependent on everything else for the illusion of its separateness. Just a way of talking about it. Nothing I invented. How do we do that? The way we do that is to look at it. The way we do that is to observe it. The way we do that is to receive what shows up no matter what. Because if you have an exception, well, I'll do this as long as they don't do this, or I'll do this as long as I don't get this kind of treatment, or if this doesn't happen. Always some kind of, I'll do it, but no, if it's a spiritual path, you have to do it no matter what, because anything that arises in your mind stream that looks like an obstacle, or looks like a threat, or looks like is just part of the illusion. If you're on the spiritual path, if you want to realize your true nature, it's going to take some work, some effort, and some strong intention to see it no matter what, because if there's always situations, well, I'll do it as long as this doesn't happen. There can't be an exception. This doesn't mean that that you should go the other way around and just receive everything, no matter how much it burns or hurts. No, you might want to back away. You're not crazy, but you don't make an issue out of it, turn it into some kind of a vendetta or some kind of a reason to get revenge. The feeling of revenge and the actual act of revenge are quite a bit different. If the feeling of wanting to get revenge shows up, receive that. Don't try to stop that. Oh, I shouldn't feel that way. Yes, you should. If it shows up, you have it coming, not because you're guilty. You have it coming, not because some kind of a payback. You have it coming. Why do you have it coming? It's dependently arisen. There's no personhood there anyway. That's the illusion. We think we're somebody who can be harmed. We think we're somebody who's having a negative feeling, a positive feeling, and any kind of a feeling that would arise that would seem neutral, like a neutral position on an illusion. So it seems to be necessary if we want to, if we're somewhat inspired by this, maybe not what I've said, but what might be arising in your mind as I'm saying this, some way of living your life without agreeing. I mean, do it for 10 minutes every day. Don't agree, don't disagree, and don't ignore. If you can. And of course, since it's about awareness, it's not about success. If you think it's about success, it's spiritual materialism, as my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, pointed out 50 years ago. 50 plus years. This is about awareness, the space in which, when things occur. Nothing happens in the space. If something happens or nothing happens as the space. If something happens as the space, it's just more things. Space is not a thing. It is a dynamic in which things, feelings, thoughts, emotions, birds, mountains, rivers, tigers appear and disappear, appear, disappear. Nothing lasts. Everything comes and goes. Everything is without a center, without a self. It has no central identity. It just looks like it. And it's so convincing, isn't it? Very convincing if someone comes up and insults you, picks on you, pushes you, is aggressive with you. It's very, very difficult because we tend to want to react and defend ourselves, or maybe run away, or maybe just be just dismissive. Well, what do they know? Don't do anything with it. Do nothing with it. This is a difficult practice. And as you've heard me say a few times, said before I got here, this is not for everyone. I'm not here to try to promote people to become meditators. To make no promises, there's no guarantee of this. No guarantee that you'll succeed at realizing your true nature. So I can continue, and I can also take some questions. Yes, sir.
Shoto bowing with the stream example, the stream's flowing, but my ego wants to manipulate that. When you say be genuine, is that just the stream?
Be the ego. It's awareness of being the ego. It's the awareness that you're opposing to that. And what Barry Stevens was saying, whichever way the river flows, go that way. It's just an instruction from her. Excuse me. If you can, whatever happens, don't agree, don't disagree, but just her way of saying it. My way was to say that would be just observe that. Or whatever shows up, just receive it. And including the ego. So she's actually pointing at a river. You tend to get caught in the image. I'm saying that the ego rising, if it's been triggered, is the river. So in other words, what am I saying here? I'll say it very literally. Be the ego. Be genuine. Be the crap you're trying to get rid of so you can get a good idea of what the crap is. Be responsible. If you eventually see that there's negative things about you that you cannot get rid of, that will not go away, no matter what you do. You know where I'm going with this? Anyone know where I'm going with this? This is, I rarely use this word, this is surrender. You eventually just stop fighting with yourself. And what will show up, not maybe not to you, but to others, will be humility. May look like arrogance to people that are distance away, but people that are very close to you see that you're not, it's not just phony self-effacement. You actually don't have a strong central organizing situation in your mind stream or in your body-mind complex, that you're not concerned about what happens next. This doesn't mean that you don't suffer, doesn't mean that you don't have difficulty with things. You still have the same emotions everyone else is having. But there's no demand for something else. There's no demand for this to stop. There's no demand for that to start. And there's no demand for that to go away because of it, because it is inconsequential. Well,
Shoto bowing. How is a slogan like "Go with the flow"? Maybe not complete.
now what?
Complete, or does that miss something?
It's a good start, but there's a lot that you can't just, the ego just wants to go with the flow. So the ego can go with the flow until something gets just too unruly, and then, well, I'm not going with that. I'm going along with that. That's not going with the flow. That's agreeing with the enemy or whatever. So going with the flow is, it works to some extent. You have negativity happen and just negativity around you. If you can, just go with that. Tell the river to go that way. But if, without strong mind training, you will probably come up against a situation that is just too intense to do that, or too painful. And at that point, or that case, in that case, it seems to be necessary to actually just be whatever shows up, and that will hurt more than likely, or that will cause anger more than likely. And don't do anything with it. If you come out of that anger with a fist against the wall, which you and I are both very familiar with, not saying that's wrong, but if you have a sincerity and intention to train your mind to see the truth, that slamming one's fist against the wall, which I did for a while and when I was younger, it just stops. You don't have to stop it or stop doing that. Because consciousness or awareness is much more inclusive and expansive than just being concerned about that little angry incident. So you don't have to be a better person. Being a better person is ego. And I'm not saying that the world isn't full of those kinds of strategies. I can name a lot of famous people that talk about cleaning up your act, being better. Everyone from Tom Robbins, Norman Vincent Peale, all these people who want to create better people. And I'm not against that. Some people need to do that. Some people need to work with us in a very relative way, not ready to sit down and watch the mind hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after, year after year, decade after decade. And I mean the decade part. Because the karma that brought you into this world isn't just, but 35 years old. It's ancient. We've all been here forever, not this particular incarnation, but it goes way back there. And when this gets really difficult, sometimes we just don't want to do it. We just want to, might be on the path for 3 years or 10 years or whatever, just can't do this anymore. That does happen to people. Not going to happen to you, I hope. Just keep going. I use the phrase, no matter what. And just say, do this, you received the vow, return to this vow no matter what, because if there's some kind of situation where you're not going to return to it, then it's not the spiritual path, it's the mundane path of success, failure, right and wrong, should be, shouldn't be, and we're right back into relative truth, which means that you believe the illusion and you're going to try to squeeze some happiness out of this illusion, even though death comes without warning. There's no way to get happiness out of this. Not that you can't go have lunch, not against that. What have you done? Go ahead.
Shoto bowing, that, just to use that example of hitting something, punching the wall. Might we need to do that to see how painful that is and actually observe it?
Probably not going to have much choice there. It's just you get enraged or something, you get mad, and need to have something, you're not gonna hit a person, but, well, I can hit a wall, but make sure you hit between the 2x4s. Because if you hit on one of those 2x4s, it's not gonna give, whereas if you get between them, I'm sure you've noticed, the drywall will cave in and save your fist. How are you doing in that area?
I tend to hit the harder spot because I want to cause myself damage.
Oh, I guess I'm more of a coward than you are. So I haven't done that in a while, but that was something I did when I was young. Intense anger and rage. How I got here is because of anger. I was bad. More? Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Yes, sir.
Milka bowing, using that image of the tiger, when we see the teeth and claws, or say somebody's coming at us with insults, to need to look for the soft furry part of the tiger. Bowing.
I'm following what you're saying. I don't know. I think I'd stay with the teeth. Rather than try to find some softer way to do it. But the way I understand the question, I would just say, just look it right in the face and receive it. Because it fundamentally, what is real, this is a phrase that you've probably heard before, what is real is not threat. But what we think is real can be terrified, and can be, you can shake in your boots, as they say. And it's necessary, according to my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, it's necessary to go directly into the negativity. His way of saying it, march directly into disappointment. To go right into the disappointment rather than try to avoid it, covered up, or blame someone for it. Blame yourself, blame something else, blame the situation, blame your job, blame your employer, blame. If you have emotions that are intense and you leave those emotions for what caused it, even though it has some accuracy to it, it's not wrong. It's just a mundane path. It's not a spiritual path. Spiritual path is to receive no matter what. Yes.
Elena bowing. Sorry, I want to record this at the same time. You say return to the vow no matter what. So what if being genuine conflicts with returning to the vow, such as do no harm?
Very good question. So if you're trying to have a credential of doing no harm, that's a mundane path. But if you return to the vow no matter what, some people may be harmed by that. They may even blame you or yell at you. But it's your vow. Don't live up, don't listen to anyone else's vow, including the teacher. It's your vow. This is a dangerous world. The first noble truth is life is suffering. It's not about avoiding the suffering. And it's also not about avoiding blame or necessarily flexing your muscles, because you're going to do this no matter what. Or return to the vow. All Dharma's seventh great precept in our lineage of the 16 precept in Sokuzan is all dharmas are without blame. But this is the ultimate teaching. It's difficult to realize this because it looks like this caused that, and of course this did cause that, but we're ignoring the incredible display of otherness that it caused all the other things around. That's all ignored because we like this about that. That way we get blame and we can give credit and so on. So return to the vow, return to the 16 precepts, which I think you're studying. Welcome. Thank you for the question. Further questions? Yudao.
Bowing, I wanted to ask about the act of revenge and the feeling of revenge.
Yes.
So if you're angry and you want to lash out at somebody, but you don't because you can see that that wouldn't work and you're too angry, it kind of seems to go underground and slip out sideways anyway, like a passive aggressive
Yes.
thing. What's to be done with that?
You're doing it. It just doesn't feel very successful. What I'm hearing, the way you describe that, that's the awareness of what's happening. Something happens, we get irritated or angry about it, and so but we don't lash out, we don't hook up our vocal cords or our fists. Excuse me, we don't get revenge, but we'd like to get revenge, but we just don't. So that's awareness. That doesn't mean that by doing that there's going to be some kind of positive outcome where you won't eventually lash out, or that possibly the whole feeling of revenge will back off and disappear. It's important to be aware of what's happening, not to control outcomes. If you get caught in controlling outcomes, we're right back to materialism, and we're right back to changing the mundane, or the spiritual path of realization into the mundane path of getting results, being a good meditator, being a good bodhisattva. It's smeared all over the place. It's rare to find someone who has a fundamental understanding of what this path is. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's unusual because most people are thinking about success and failure and a good person and a bad person. They're caught in the relativity, the cultural dynamic that is the underlayment of that. And it's difficult for the Buddha's Dharma, or those who teach the Buddha's Dharma, to come in and work with that in such a way that doesn't create warfare, but helps someone slowly train your mind to see clearly what this is, so you see what it is. There will be no credential. The talk that my teacher Chogyam Trungpa gave in the 1970s that I first heard was called Buddha Dharma without credentials. Buddha, awakened, Dharma, truth, awakened truth with no proof. There's no, you won't feel like you've understood anything. Further questions? Are there any online?
Milka bowing question on YouTube from Shane. The one we know.
Shane Thompson?
Yes. How does one leave the path? Seems like once you catch the Dharma bug, it stays with you. Bowing, Shane bowing.
I think it's very, it depends on the karma that brought you here in the first place. So it's so varied that it's basically through ignorance. It's harder to leave the path if one is doing sitting meditation and has a teacher. But you can do sitting meditation and just put yourself into a state of mind where you're not really looking at the craziness, the neurosis, or the confusion, or the passion, aggression, the ignorance in the mind, because you've maintained some kind of a state of awareness. So you don't have to look at that. It can feel quite comfortable. So that is one way. And if you have a teacher, then he or she or they, if they're if they've had some understanding or realization about what this is, they're teaching out of a consciousness rather than out of opinions, judgments, evaluations, and ideas, then there's a possibility, if you're open to being taught, which not everyone is, people can say, oh yes, I want you to be my teacher, I want you to, but they don't really mean it up to a point. As soon as you start going into the very area that they're blind and they covered it up, they don't want that. So then they may run another way. Not wrong, it's just painful. You'll have trouble. More, Shane? Anyone else there?
Not yet.
So, no, James, go ahead.
James Bowling. Is it important to contemplate the results of other becomings? Like, you know, the result of all successes leading to failure eventually.
If I understand what you're asking me, then I don't think so. What is important, and I'm very biased. I'm very opinionated in this area. I don't have many opinions, but the one that I have is, if you're alive, train your mind. Because if you don't train your mind, this is going to keep, and if you think life is painful now, it can get much worse than this. We're in a completely free and well-favored situation. You're free to come and go to on Zoom or to a monastery. You're here, so you must have some freedom there. And you're well-favored in that your mind isn't so clogged with belief, opinions, judgments, evaluations, hope and fear, hate, and all of the other, not so clogged with that so it gives you a chance to consider what this person's saying, or what the Buddha's Dharma is saying, reading a book, reading the Majjhima Nikaya, or the Samyutta Nikaya, Digha Nikaya, or any of the other literature, Nagarjuna, or Vasubandhu, or Dogen Zenji, or Huineng, or all those, just on and on and on, teachers who have studied the Buddha's Dharma and realized that are teaching. I'm not in disagreement or with any of those teachings, just said in different ways.
James Ballin, how do you receive something extreme, like say someone planting a bloody knife in your car and calling the cops on you?
Run away. So I'm
From
not,
who?
it's a pretty extreme one, so I'm supposed to give you advice on that. I'm not there. I didn't do that. I didn't put them in there. It's a knife, that's blood on it. Is the blood of a squirrel or is it a human blood? I mean, there's just so many variables there, and I see where you're going with it. I understand, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, but I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying, but the very best thing I can say in response to this, train your mind so you see clearly. So if you do run into a situation like that, you have some basic sanity about it rather than jump into some kind of paranoia, which destroys your awareness. As soon as you become paranoid, you can't see, you're blind because there's so much fear. Paranoia covers up the fear because paranoia produces a lot of stories and speculation about who did it, where they're at, what's happening now, can I get away, am I in trouble, are the police coming for me, are they going to think that I did this because of what somebody said, as you were alluding to. Train your mind so that when that situation does arise, that you could say it this way, you're ready for that. You can have some sanity about that. With the way our whole society is going right now, I don't know how much is even, I hope you to be sane, because there are people that are supposed to be protecting you are pretty crazy, some of them getting very difficult. You doubt, do you have a question? Yes, sir.
Shoto bowing, is there any indication when we're sitting and practicing meditation that we're not training the mind anymore and locking down?
You don't need to look at it that way. I follow you. The most important thing for you to do is to sit down, pull still, and look at the wall, gaze at the wall, and then stay in touch with the community that you're in through reading and studying together, and talk to the teacher once in a while. You don't have to talk to the teacher every, once a week or anything, but occasionally talk about what is happening in your awareness practice. Doesn't have to be much. Just a little bit. This is happening, that's happening. Or yes, that way, the person who's functioning as your teacher might be able to give you some feedback on there. They might ask you a question about what's happening in certain ways. It's very relative. It's dependent. So there's the pieces and parts of that are so multiple. There's just so many different directions. Important thing is hold still. Don't maintain it. Return to the stillness and be an observer. Observe what's happening, and if you can, without adding or commenting on anything. This trains you, as in sitting meditation, this trains you for when you get off the cushion and go into your everyday life to do more of that. You can't just make yourself do that. It kind of happens spontaneously. You just start to really listen to people. You see, you're not going to get a credential, although someone might give you one. They might notice that 10 years ago when they first met you, you talk constantly. Now you talk less. And you listen. People know when you're listening to them. So that's not necessarily a credential either. Yes.
Shoto bowing, is it still receiving when, like, for example, I'm hearing some of what you say, but I tend to drift off or I can't stay on you the whole time? Is that still receiving?
Well, you're aware that you're doing that. You couldn't talk about it. There are people drifting away that don't even know it. There are people that are drifting away so much they don't even come to this talk. You might hear about it, they don't come. And someone else might hear about it and think, why would I do that? I'm gonna go work in my garden, do something worthwhile, valuable, something practical, something that makes sense. And it relatively, of course, it makes sense. Don't waste your time in here listening to this old man talk about stuff. Work in your garden. So I would validate that. The person needs to do that, they should do that. The right and wrong are just extra. We don't need that. More?
Shoto bowing, is that an area that, like, your teaching of returning shows up where I don't have to maintain what you're saying, but I can keep coming back to it while you're talking?
Exactly, yes. It's okay to drift off. We all drift off. We all sit on the cushion and fall asleep. I'm sure you've noticed. We are in the middle of listening, or looking right at someone and they're telling us something with a lot of energy, what they're talking about, and we notice that we don't care what they're talking about. We're thinking about something else, probably what we're gonna say to them if they ever stop talking. You hear that, don't you, Michelle? I mean, no one is, there's like one person does this more than the other. We're all doing that a little bit. I'm sure as a therapist, you spend time in listening to a client where you kind of space out what they just said. Didn't that happen to you sometime? So it's not a deliberate, like, oh, I made a terrible mistake. You eventually, from doing that, you realize that that's just part of being a therapist. You're listening to someone and you're trying to see if you can somehow help them with their issues and their problems based on how they're functioning. It might not be meditators. You don't necessarily try to get them to meditate. So it might be more of a transactional or a cognitive behavioral approach or any of the other approaches that. Is that true? Yes.
Wonderful. Does what is genuine for us or change moment to moment? 1 minute we might react a certain way to the situation. 1 minute we might be able to go with the flow.
So the way I use the word genuine, I first heard that from Trump Rinpoche and had no idea what he meant by be genuine. But and I still don't know for sure what he intended, but the way it looks as I use that, be genuine, it's just be the difficulty you're endeavoring to get away from or back away from or blame somebody about or do anything other than be responsible for how you are, how you feel. It's no big threat. There's no who you actually are is totally not in danger, not threatened. But it might feel that way. So if you can actually just work with the feelings that just wash over you, it's just like you're just like a tree in a windstorm. Just be the tree and just feel the windstorm. So just receive. Might get close to what you're looking for. Is there something?
Wonderful. I'm curious about, can 1 minute we receive and the next minute we can't? Same situation.
Yes. If there's an awareness about shutting down and opening up. There's an awareness that has a continuity to it. If you, through your sitting practice, through your study and so on, as you've gone along on the path, begin to understand the way consciousness works. I would say it that way in a very pragmatic way. The way it works is to see that it's always consciousness. Everything is always consciousness. There is a continuity to it there. Even when you go to sleep, there's still a continuity. Nothing sleeps. It just looks like it.
Wonderful. It seems like we can connect with that at times and other times not.
Yes, that's awareness. But it's connect or not connect isn't success and failure. It's just connect, not connect. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, always awake. Everything's Buddha. It's not an idealistic kind of position. It's no position.
Divine, that makes me think of the teaching that we are already awake. We are already realized.
Yes. Go ahead.
How can we return to that in some way, or can that help us see how we fight that reality, that consciousness?
Yes, the returning is the practice. At some point, there isn't anything to return to. It's like a point. It's not a point, but it's like at some point there's just nothing left of the otherness. We've actually realized this. So all the polarities that used to be over there, over here, over here, over there, it's gone. That doesn't mean you somehow go up in smoke, though you might. It just means that all the polarities, any otherness is not pride and shame. Life and death, there's a big one, not separate from each other. They're separated, they get very separated, they're fundamentally not separate from each other. That's possible to realize that. When as you're still a living form human being, possible to realize that this is not separate from death. Pride and shame is another one. People who are full, sometimes a person is full of pride their whole life, they never experience of shame, it's just too difficult. And then other people have the other kind of pride that is always shame, always feel like they can't get anything, I'm terrible, I can't get anything right, I'm always a failure. Once in a while, if they start to pop up a little bit, then they feel ashamed that they shouldn't feel that way, I'm not worth anything, I'm not good. So they'll buy, instead of realizing those are same thing. If that is showing up in consciousness, then the area of consciousness that used to be substantiated, fulfilled, or fueled by the pride, or protected by the pride, me, myself, protected, or made to feel worthless or something, that's still ego. Feeling worthless is still somebody who feels worthless. So that protects that ego by just feeling worthless. You follow that a little bit? Go ahead.
Bowing, it seems like it's almost watching the flow. If we're going against whatever's showing up, desire for something else, that shows us our false identity, our ego, our narcissism.
Yes, it shows us how we're taking a position on something in order to stabilize our false identity, ego. Anytime you take a position, even if it's backed up by relative truth, that's why it's so difficult, because it seems like, well, this is true, so. But it's an illusion. Yes,
Would it be too simple to say that whenever we see fighting, fighting what is, that would be ego bowing?
but anytime you're fighting something, it's part of the illusion. Warfare, if that's what you're going through. Anytime you object to anything, agree with anything, aggression, passion, ignorance. So,
Shadow bowing seems like aggression or the fighting's easy to see that's pretty self-centered, but how is agreeing?
but
How is agreement similar?
so you're, and I'm going to go into the story that you seem to be presenting, is that we're, without really looking at something, we're taking a position on it, we're agreeing with it, just easier. You just agree with that. Passion. Yeah, we just agree. We just go along, we're just gonna go along with that. And it can show up as far as ego, it shows up as being an agreeable person. I just go along, I don't fight with anything, I just go along, still ego. It's better than that, it's worse than that. I'll start out with it's worse than that because there's still a cover up. You still have some very difficult work to do if you're functioning to protect your ego in that way, being agreeable, go along with everything program. That's where I would disagree with Barry Stevens and her, whatever way the Whitworth's going, say go that. I would totally agree with her. I think she's got a good start. Of course, she's not checking in with me to see what I think about it. It's a pretty good book, as I recall. I read it 60 years ago. More?
Shadow bowing, how is receiving, and I'm thinking about from the teacher, how is receiving from the teacher different than agreeing with the teacher bowing?
Because if you're receiving from the teacher or from the teaching, if you're really receiving, you won't know what it is you're receiving. You know what it is you're receiving, then you're conceptualizing it in some way so that it's more acceptable. You put some frosting on the cake that has no flavor. So that you have something you can imbibe. Don't agree with anything, don't disagree with anything, don't ignore anything. That's a teachings here long before I got here, before any of us got here. Yes,
Shoto bowing, that makes me think of like the phrase receive it as a teaching. And when I do that, I'm calling something a teaching, which seems like another layer. What is it to actually receive something as a teaching?
you won't know what it is, consciousness. Receives it, and it may have to go through the filter or the scrim or the cage of ego in order to get to you. You may have to, the whole totality, the whole situation is here. Your Buddha nature, your disturbed nature, your ego aspect of your consciousness are all here sitting in the cushion or studying the Dharma or sitting here asking questions. Same is happening over here. This has not gone away. Nothing's happened over here. Something's happened over here where suddenly this old man has become enlightened, therefore he can teach the Dharma. That's just bullshit. It's not true. It's just more relative stuff. There's no credential here. No proof. Go ahead.
Shoto bowing, I'm thinking of something I do where when it feels like you've pointed something out I didn't see, I'll write you a text where I thank you and explain it. Is that covering up the thing that you were trying to point out?
Do I say you're welcome?
Sometimes, yeah.
How about the time I don't say that? How about the time I don't respond at all? What does he want to know? I don't want to make light of what you're asking about.
Shoto bowing, I'm just looking at how it seems like I subtly turned the teachings into a transaction.
That's awareness. You don't have to stop that, just be aware of it. It's not transactional. It certainly looks like it. And I've had some dealings with that myself with the students that think it's a transaction. It's not. It'd be painful to realize that, very, very embarrassing to realize that you've been treating your teacher as someone you're having a transaction with. You'll do something, they'll do something.
Shoto bowing, so in a sense, does it not matter if it looks transactional to me, bowing?
Well, it matters. I gotta get out of it that easy. Might have to go through some loops and loops before you get to something where it's an open dimension, where the reference points are gone and they're just consciousness only. That won't be a success story. You can't realize that and won't realize that and realize that. Used to be, I thought there was somebody and something, and now I realize it's consciousness only. It's better than that, it's worse than that. It's worse than that because it's absolutely disappointing to ego. It's devastating to ego. Painful, can be very painful. And some ego positions in consciousness in human beings don't want that. And they'll get right to that Dharma door, that Dharma gate, and they just can't go through it. It's just too painful. It's too embarrassing. And they'd rather keep their self-centeredness, their pride, and march off in another direction. And they should do that. Sometimes they might have to do it for 50 or 60 lifetimes, or maybe only 3. More.
Shoto bowing, as a teacher, do you have to wait for someone's permission to interrupt that or poke that?
Well, once I'm given permission, like you're a monk, so I pretty much have permission from you. But then everyone's different. So you might give the permission, and then when it starts to get difficult, you might decide to throw your robe back at me, which has happened. As you know, not you, but it's happened. They didn't really throw it, they just tossed it. Was that wrong? No, person is suffering. They're suffering, so they didn't, but they did not come and talk to me about it. So that's the mistake that quite often happens. People don't talk, they don't talk about it. I mean, they're so freaked out or paranoid They know that if they talk to me about it, they might have to take a little bit of responsibility for what's happening. Whereas if they don't, then they just get to blame me for it, or blame the path, or blame themselves. They might just, it might be something where I just can't do this anymore. It might not be about blaming me or the karma at all, just themselves. It's too hard. I'm not gonna do it. Perhaps. Thank you. Is there a question on Zoom? Yashin?
Heavy bowing.
Naveed, go ahead, and I'll get to Yashin in a minute. Go ahead, Naveed.
Thank you. You often say that awakening is the last disappointment.
Yes.
So I'm wondering disappointment with what? What? Bound.
Because, well, it's disappointing in that, and when that it doesn't come about because nothing happens. So it's disappointing in that it takes time. You just realize that you don't have a position on anything anymore. You don't have a position on being alive. This doesn't mean you can't get flooded with negative feelings. Consciousness is still here. There's still a human form. There's still nerve endings. So you're still at the mercy of all the things that are coming and going in everybody's mind, including the mind that showed up there before you perhaps have realized your true nature. So it's disappointing in that there's you don't get anything. There's no payoff. There's no one left. There never was anyone. And you realize that there's no one here, so there's no one to receive anything. Your whole life, the whole path has been receive, observe and receive, observe and receive, observe and receive. And then suddenly there's nothing left to receive because everywhere you look, you don't see anything else. You don't see other people. If the other person that you're talking to thinks they're a person, you meet them where they're at. You treat them like another person, but you know they don't exist like they think they do. You see it, they don't, but you can't just say, oh, by the way, oh no, you don't exist. She's gonna say, what? You know, it's the last time I'm gonna bow to you. More about that? Naveed, good question.
Heavy bowing. Is there a sense of giving up or maybe something coming to an end in that feeling?
I think it's a good question, but I think it's more than, nothing comes to an end because the fundamental understanding is there never was anything. So the whole thing was an illusion. So nothing's come to an end. It's you see that nothing has actually even started. So that's why it's so disappointing, because it's nothing. Yet you have people who are suffering everywhere around. This is the pain of the composite. You see, feel, hear, think, smell, understand that everyone that you meet is suffering, and they're trying to cover it up. They're trying to blame by covering it up, to cover it up, but excuse me, or they're trying to ignore it. They're trying to distract themselves into something else, so they don't have to be aware of the cover up. But you're no longer doing that. You're nothing but nerve endings everywhere. Disappointing. But it's also there's no regret about it. There's no one left. So there's no one that has a position on anything. You may have a student, you may not. If you don't have students, you'll just hang out, you'll just be here. If you have students, then you'll meet that student in the midst of their confusion, and with their permission, endeavor to point to them what they're covering up that prevents them from seeing their true nature. With their permission. If they don't have the permission, no propaganda going on where you're trying to get somebody to be your student or something like that. More?
Not right now, thank you.
Welcome. Yashin.
Yashin bowing. Does hope for something else stop us from receiving what is in front of us? Bowing.
Seems to. How's it look to you?
Yes. Also, like a question related to what Naveed, I think, just asked is, do we experience disappointment only when we still have a hope? Bowing.
Oh, yes. Say so. That's what's meant by hopelessness. You're beyond hope and fear. You're not afraid of anything, and you don't hope for anything, because there isn't anything else. You see that time is an illusion, you actually see it. And it's not a big deal, it's ordinary. Tamogishepa, it's ordinary mind. If you're interested, I can't give it to you. I can't say, here, have this. But I can say, you can find it right here. But you're going to have to sit down and face the wall, or whatever practice you're doing. I don't know what the practice is or what practice you need. Speaking to every one of you here, I don't know what that is, only you know. But that's where it's found. It's found. You have to go within. This is not anything new. It's not something that the Buddha did not already point to centuries ago. But yes, beyond hope and fear. No hope. Hopeless. It's not a bad feeling. Fearless. Not a bad feeling. Not a puffed up, courageous feeling either. Just fearless. This doesn't mean that you're going to run into the teeth of a tiger. But you're not going to necessarily be frightened by it. If it's a tiger, it might need to eat.